This is Kelsey with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. Today we're going to be making meat and vegetable quesadillas. We'd like to thank the great culinary tradition of Mexico for the inspiration for this quesadilla dish. The ingredients we'll need for the recipe today is a ground meat, shredded cheese. Our vegetables are garlic, onion, and bell pepper, as well as some canned corn. We'll be using the tortillas from this taco kit, as well as salsa as a side and some variety of seasonings. I found it really helpful to do what professional cooks called mise en place, which just means putting things in its place. So before you start any recipe, you want to take a minute to read through the recipe and then get out all the ingredients, measuring equipment, as well as whatever cooking things you're going to need for that recipe and put it in its place. It takes about 5 minutes to do, but it really saves a lot of time while you're cooking, and then it's more relaxed and less of a chaotic feeling. Next, to get everything ready in its place to cook, we're going to chop our vegetables so that they're ready when it's time to cook them. So we'll start by chopping the pepper. What I like to do with bell peppers is to cut along the top here. This just makes it easier with the seeds. You can also use a smaller knife, that'll probably be easier to do. And then you can take this out, and then here you have the seeds mostly removed with the top. Cut it in half. Oh, we'll put it down like this. Cut it again. Remove any of those seeds in there. You can eat them, it would just be an extra crunch, so I like to go ahead and remove them. We're gonna dice the bell pepper by first cutting it into long strips like this. Make sure to keep your fingers tucked away. And then by slicing them into small bits like this. Next, we're gonna dice our onion. So we'll start by slicing this off right here so we can peel it easier. Set that aside. Take off the outer layer here. Okay, we'll scrape that away with the back of the knife so we don't dull our knives. And then we'll start by cutting it in half. Again, making sure we have our fingers curled away from the knife. Slice that in half. Chop this. This is about how big of a piece you're looking for. Alrighty, we need 1 clove of garlic for this recipe, so we'll start by peeling it. You only have to peel enough to see how much you need, and then we can just pull that out. All right. We'll set this aside and use it in a different recipe. I find it helpful to kind of smash the garlic a little bit, just to get a little crack, and then I can start peeling it. Did you know that not only does garlic have really good flavor to it, but studies show it can also help boost your immunity, especially during cold and flu season like this. That can be a really good thing. Okay, and if you have a mincer, you're welcome to do that for this recipe. We're just gonna use a knife and kind of keep it in bigger chunks. And we're just gonna dice it up really small. And if you like a lot of garlic, you can put in more. If you're not a fan of garlic, you can put in a bit less. Totally up to you and your taste preferences. Okay. Get rid of that stem there. kind of like to clump it together like this. Makes it go a little faster. And just chop it. Nice and fine. For me today, we're going to be using this chicken and beef topping, which is something we have here at the food bank, and it'd be a great substitute for your ground beef or ground turkey. First, we're going to spray the pan so it doesn't stick. I'm using a spray here because the meat has a lot of the fat on its own, so you can choose a leaner option. And we're going to go ahead and pour it in. And this meat is a good source of protein. Think of protein as kind of like the building blocks of your body. So it's important to think about in each meal having some source of protein. And here in the US, most people get enough protein from meat. What we usually don't get a lot of is our plant-based proteins. So that's one of the reasons why the recommendations for the Dietary Guidelines of America include vary your protein routine. So think about including those plant-based protein sources like beans and nuts and seeds, as well as fish a couple times a week. That way not only you're getting protein, but you're getting other health benefits that come from different types of food. Okay, our meat is done. It's nice and browned, and for ground beef and meat, we want an internal temperature of 155. So for this recipe that serves 4, we're gonna want half a pound or 8 ounces. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and measure this out now. We're a little over 8 ounces, so I'll just take a little bit out. And we can, if it's a little bit over, that's okay. And if you don't have a scale at home, you can also cook meat and then add as much to your preference, and then save the rest and use it as leftovers in another recipe. So our meat is done, and we're setting aside for now to focus on cooking our vegetables. We're gonna cook our vegetables in the skillet here, and actually if you just rather use a skillet at home or a hot plate, you can do it to cook the meat as well and then take it out and set it aside. So we'll start by putting our oil in our skillet. So we're gonna be using olive oil today as our fat instead of something like butter, because the fat in olive oil is unsaturated fat, and that's gonna be better for our heart health. It's a great health rule of thumb to think about making half your plate fruits and vegetables, and that's because of the nutrition content in them. They have health benefits for us, as well as they're low in calories and things that are too much of could be harmful for our health, like saturated fat and added sugars. So the vegetables we'll be using today are, first, 1 clove of garlic, 1 small onion, half a cup of canned corn, and a half a cup of bell pepper. We choose red for today, but you could use green, yellow, or orange. And I like to try to ask myself the question, how can I add vegetables to this meal? And that can be a fun challenge, just to make sure your meals are really nutrient dense. That way I know I'm gonna try to reach that goal of making half my plate fruits and vegetables and making my meals really nutritious as well as filling, and that can help stretch the meal when I'm on a budget. And you can do that by adding frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, fresh and in-season vegetables, really whatever is on hand and available to you. All right, let's go ahead and add our seasonings to our vegetables. First, we're gonna do a teaspoon of chili pepper, or a little bit more. That's why it's a good idea to sometimes measure out your seasonings over the sink or a bowl, especially if you're doing something spicy. But we'll just add a little extra flavor in there. Next is cumin. We're also going to be adding salt here next. And if you or someone in your family has high blood pressure, it can be a good idea to either lower or replace the salt with some more fresh herbs like this recipe. I think cilantro and oregano will go well with the rest of the flavor. We're gonna add a little bit of salt. About a quarter teaspoon. This is a half, so I won't. And then just spread it out. And when you're thinking about adding salt at the table, it's a good idea to go ahead and taste it and see if you really need it and then add it from there. I think a lot of us just out of habit will add salt at the table, but especially if we're thinking about our blood pressure and our heart health, wanting to lower that salt, tasting something first can be a good way to do that. And now we're doing some black pepper. The last step before assembling our quesadillas is combining the meat with the cooked vegetables. Okay, let's assemble our quesadilla. So we're gonna start with a salsa. It's a little different way of doing it, almost like building a pizza. But we'll put it down on the bottom here. And this just adds more flavor as well as more vegetables. So you're kind of getting a win-win there. All right. Then we're gonna put on the meat here, the meat and vegetables. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it here to see what will fit. Depending on how filled you like your quesadilla, you can do more or less, depending on how many people you're serving, as well if you're serving any sides. All right, that looks good to me. And I'm just gonna top it with some cheese here. And since we're using smaller tortillas for our quesadilla, I'm actually just gonna put another one on top here versus the usual fold. We're gonna spray the hot skillet here. And then go ahead and place our quesadilla on, watching out for the hot skillet. And then we'll leave that about 2 minutes on each side. So here's our finished product. And if you wanna add some more salsa on the side for dipping, you're welcome. Go ahead and add some in there. And that's all it takes to make a quick, easy meal for the family.